Well, hello everyone. It's been a long time since I've done a video. Um, First of all, I want to say the microphone audio is going to be a little off. I don't have my full headset, my typical headset with me. I'm kind of using the built-in microphone. But anyway, what I thought about doing, as I said in the past, when I do these videos, kind of like if something interests me or something I could talk about. And what's been more interesting recently, as I'm recording this, just a couple days from New Year's Eve 2022, is the Southwest Airlines Debacle. And I thought about talking about that, kind of go over the Southwest system, how they differ from the other airlines besides the low cost factor, but like their actual operational system. And what almost kind of like the snowball effect that led to this epic meltdown they've experienced as I was recording this several days, ever since really before Christmas. So it's about a week now. They have had cancellations like 70% almost each day. I mean, the comments online are just endless. People can't get a hold of customer service and so forth. And it's sad for especially the people involved. But it's very interesting to see a meltdown of this magnitude. Like there's been times there's been airline issues, like a day or two where they've had the system gone down or a snowstorm and then they recover. Southwest is not really recovering at all. In fact, they think they may not even get even to normalcy of any sort until, literally next year. But in reality, like sometime in early January, maybe the third, like the second, the earliest, but probably like next week at the earliest. There's stores people may not get their bags until like mid-January and so forth. So it's a very fascinating situation. And I thought about, well, it'd be fun to cover it and so forth. The one that I don't know if I have. Ooh, I do have it. This is great. So before we start the video, we're gonna recreate a Southwest flight right now. Actually, let me zoom in. So St. Louis International Airport. So it's got two terminals. This terminal here is you see with the gates, which is actually updated. These have the updated gates here. These are all Southwest flights. It's bigger. It's become a big focus city. So, let's say, this is a route with Southwest from St. Louis. There it is, McCarran. I forgot they do the K's. It throws me off. Yeah, no way, that's 2 hours and 40 minutes. Anyway, we're going to recreate a Southwest flight, how it looks in the holiday season. So I thought this would be a little fun to do. But yeah, with Southwest, I guess I'll start kind of like the background of Southwest, like what they are, how they got started in a way, and the models. And I guess more important, I should say their model. But the background is like, they were formed out of Texas. The story is kind of fascinating. The founder kind of came to the idea, I think with a friend or someone, a friend on a bar napkin, and they kind of started back in the day just in Texas. But mind you, this is back in, I think in the 60s, early 70s. So this is like an era where it isn't like, airlines had to be national. It wasn't, still very heavily regulated. So it was a very different era. Like Pan Am back then, they were just like Air National. They were known as Pan American Airways. They're just kind of like, Tokyo, London, overseas bases, and a few, intercontinental flights, before they had a domestic type setup that they eventually merged. And similar Southwest, like when they got set, was just in Texas, very limited, but a very different era back then. It's so many more airlines, very regional based. They used to be like Ozark as an example. Excuse me, occasionally I'm taking a little water. But anyway, what they did differently than like the other airlines. So most airlines, if you think like the legacy, we call legacy carriers like United, American, or Delta, they do a hub and spoke system. So like, Chicago's a big hub in Chicago. So it's like if you're flying from St. Louis, you will fly to Chicago and then connect to Chicago and New York. Even though they got a hub out there, but let's say Detroit or something. You connect there to get to your destination. And that's very common, the bigger ones, especially for the overseas flights. You could be coming out like, let's say you're coming out of St. Louis, well, I need to go to London, then you're going to go to Chicago, it's got international flights, and go from there. But what Southwest does, especially as a mostly a domestic carrier, but they do have a few international routes now. Like the Caribbean and so forth. They're more of like direct to rec with a lot of major focus, like a lot of focus cities. Like Kansas City, St. Louis, Dallas, Luffield, where they're based out of. I think Long Island Airport. All over around the country. And their goal is to like, okay, we're gonna offer a lot more direct flights, but it's like limited. Like you look at like Southwest, some of their flights from St. Louis to other cities, they'll have like 2 direct flights a day only, while like Chicago to that, say Chicago in that same city, same destination, they may have 5 to 8, because it's like a hub spoke. So, but the reason they do that, because then they'll have like other flights where you fly to another focus city, you connect there and so forth. But the goal is to have a lot of flights direct, and then kind of do a quick turnaround and so forth. Like some planes, when they arrive at a hub like Delta in Atlanta, it may sit there for a good few hours. Southwest is more like quick turnaround, land, get everyone off, baggage off, change flight crews, clean, and then ready to take off again. And you see that the legacy, you see planes will be reutilized quickly, but there's more of a gap than you see with Southwest. It's definitely a different system. But anyway, so I'm gonna go to camera mode here. Take a look at our. Go. So we're in the Southwest plane. Unfortunately, there's like no lighting here. Yeah, the airport line at night's been horrible for a lot of places. Anyway, so you see the Southwest plane here. It's kind of parked, not doing anything. That is the entire replication of a Southwest flight, holiday season 2020 or 2022, I should say. There you go. We're done. There's your entire flight for Southwest this season. Unless you're one of the lucky, very, very few whose plane is actually taken off. Oh, that's it. It just sits there and it does nothing. Your luggage is probably stuck in the tarmac. So, anyway, I'll go back and do another flight here in a second. An actual flight. But saying, like, the system with the Southwest is different. They have a lot of focus cities. But as I said, I was talking about the amount of direct flights or routes. It varies a bit. Like, a good example, Philadelphia is a focus city, St. Louis is a focus city, and Luffield's their hub base. It's like the headquarters. They only do the hubs, like a true hub like the Legacy Airlines you would think of. But like if you want to fly from Dallas, their headquarters to Philadelphia, their base, like one of their focus cities, you have to connect in St. Louis or another city. They don't do direct there. And that's one of the weird things to do with their routes, but it's set up that way, like, okay, fine, you connect there, but, their goal is, like, we'll give you a lot of flight options to connect somewhere and so forth. While, like I say, might be a little more limited, they usually take it to another hub, or maybe something, like, they won't take you to, like, let's say if I would fly to Chicago to Phoenix on United, they won't fly me to Albuquerque. They'll fly me to either Houston or Los Angeles or Denver, 1 to 3 other hubs. Southwest may be like St. Louis to Phoenix. Okay, well, we'll connect you in El Paso, and we'll have an El Paso flight to Phoenix because we have a base there. It's like, that's kind of how they operate. So just a little example of the differences and so forth. But for a long time, it was very successful because, like, their system made it a lot cheaper, especially because they have, like, they don't use 737 airplanes. They don't use, like you or United, you may have a 737, you may have an Airbus 320. This is an Airbus 320 in this video. The 737 sucked, but whoever released it. Obviously you got 777, 757s. Like, the amount of planes, look at the fleet of a major legacy carrier, much expanded and different, and that's a lot more parts. You need, you obviously need your engineers, your repairmen, all need to know the amount of different types of airplanes they're working on. With Southwest, you can make it simpler by having just one airplane, the 737. Now they got variations of 737, let's say 737-700 to 737-900, but at the same time, the base of the plane's not too different. If anything, maybe like if they don't have it anymore for obvious reasons, they're very old. That the very old versions of 737s from like the 60s, 70s. All right, those engines are very different from the more modern ones or the Max that have the new modern engines. But anything that's like in the last 30 years, they have very similar engines and components. It's just obviously differences in the size and the fuselage. There's minor differences, but enough where you could properly train them over, let's say, an Airbus, which might use a Rolls-Royce engine, while the Boeing uses a GE engine. Very different companies all of a sudden. Again, that's one of the roots, but this is an example of how they simplified their process. They made it cheaper to operate, and and the original CEO before he retired in 2004, he really emphasized the customer experience. There was definitely like, the best way to put it is they really did a good job for a long time building, consumer first, really focusing on the product and not about the balance sheet, and just kind of like giving you a good experience at a very discounted rate. Yes, compared to, well, back then, but let's say even like a legacy carrier. Okay, like, yeah, we don't have any, like, Southwest doesn't really have any major partners like United. If I flew, to Japan, I could fly the Japanese counterpart over the ANA, get points, get access to the lounge as a Star Alliance member, the full meals and stuff. Southwest doesn't do any of that. It's very short haul flights, short medium haul flights. Long, I guess, is probably 5 or 6 between Hawaii and California as an example, and kind of go from there. I kind of want to fly that, but that won't go well. I just want to do something goofy. Here we go. Use that. Yeah, we'll fly to Phoenix. 1 second. So anyway, just kind of a difference in the models and stuff. But anyway, they built a very good reputation. Very customer friendly. Obviously, the biggest advantage, just still today, is the 2 free bags. Others don't offer that. And for a long time, they actually had very competitive pricing, even better pricing, to be honest, than legacy carriers, at least on similar routes. But again, it varies a lot. There's always variations there. Like, for a long time, if you flew to New York City, for example, they might have flown you to the Long Island airport. Yeah, you're in New York, but you're like 50 miles away, over like the other airports are actually in the city or right outside the city. Like New York's just right across the Hudson from Manhattan, so it's right there. They got public transportation, taxi rides reasonably priced. Where the other airlines, with Southwest, it's like, well, they aren't doing that. You're flying into, miles out there, and it's kind of similar to like the discount models you might see, over like in your Ryanair or even EasyJet, where they go to these secondary cities and so forth, because that's how they save money, because they're going to a small airport where they can, get cheaper, cheaper gate fees, cheaper operations, compared to like a major like here, where those gate fees are at a premium because every airline's trying to get in, like you see sort of international. So, 1 second, I'm gonna turn down the volume slightly here. But that's more the background, the system it is, and there's a lot there, and I'm really kind of simplifying it to just kind of the core elements of like how they got their competitive advantage, how they became, as big as they are, like how they got their, very lower customer base and people who want to fly them and so forth. But I think the original CEO was, so I guess let me rephrase this. Lean into the issues of today. I read an interesting thread. It's like a former Southwest pilot that kind of gave a lot of his input and opinions on what happened. Obviously with this being the major news, anyone's tied to the company that can speak for this and speak freely. Obviously they're working there now. They won't. But it's just like interesting to kind of like listen. I was reading through him, and what he's talking about, the original CEO, I think retired in around 2004, which makes sense. I mean, it was originally founded. I don't know the exact date, but I want to say it's the late 60s, early 70s. I mean, it's been around 50 plus years, which in terms of the legacy carriers, it's a young airline. United them are back from 20s or before, when they started as mail routes or government routes. But anyway, he retired, and when they replaced the CEO, they got a guy that was more, let's say, accounting, financial focus. Like his idea was, focusing on, increasing the profit margins, increasing shareholder value because they're publicly traded company on the stock exchange, stock buybacks, dividends. Assuming they might have done dividends. The goal, but basically, you get the idea. Is like it was less about worrying about the customer or internal focus, and about the broad balance sheet. And I want to be fair, as a business, you got to have a positive balance sheet. You can't go negative or lose money. I mean, in fact, which maybe it's not like the chicken's on the roost, that's kind of what's happened to Tesla. Tesla has had very, very bad core numbers, but it's all based on estimates and growth and what they could do. It's not based on fundamentals. For an airline, you got to have fundamentals. You can't just run on growth. The investors aren't going to attach themselves to an airline because there's a lot of risk in terms of costs and the operational elements to do that. So anyway, their idea was to do that. And in the process, according to this former pilot I was reading, and again, this is like a Twitter thread, and it's like, secondhand accounts. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt. I won't say it's fully fact, but there's like a lot of similar reporting. In that time span, then they stopped investing into upgrading their internal systems. Some say they date back to the 90s. I don't know how verified that is, but I will say this. It seems like a lot of the internal systems, especially in like, the best way to put it, like the back-end systems of like, organizing like their staff members where they need to be, booking, customer service. It sounded like it got very neglected the last 25 years, where they didn't really update it. There was more issues start coming at hand, showing up, and the management kind of brush it off. They just, like, oh, well, it's not a big ordeal. No way it's going to break down. And it's just kind of like this very, to be honest, massaging themselves that nothing's wrong, everything's good. You guys, the guys on the ground staff are overreacting because we at management know better. At the same time, we don't want to spend the money to invest into these systems and upgrade these systems because we know better because we went to a business school. The balance sheet says and the data says it's not unnecessary or whatever. Stupid just stupid arrogance, really. And that's kind of how they operated for, actually, the CEO that joined from 04 left early 2022. There's a new CEO, and I'll go into a little bit. But that was really their operation in terms of management for a long time. It's for a good, basically, 18 years right there. And it was funny reading it's back to the pilot thread, former pilot or maybe current pilot, just speak freely or anonymously. He went on like that. It didn't really matter what they said. They just brushed it off and just kind of kept the stated course. And these issues started popping up as early as 2010. In a very smaller case, there were some issues where like the system went down, booking was struggling, we couldn't get the right people to the right spots, something along those lines. In the 2010s, and again, management brushed it off and so forth. And this is where it's kind of started, I would say, the divide. Because, like, any airline, especially like Southwest, but even like the older airlines back in the day, like TWA and stuff, the ground people are what really made the airline great. And he was talking about the management stopped going to the ground people, like actually like going in there to understand what's going on. I like the former CEO and his staff, where they used to, the four founders should say, where he understood what was going on the ground. He understood the issues that are going on with the staff members at the front desk, with the planes, and so forth. That got a lot more disconnected. The last CEO from 2004 to 2022, he didn't really do that at all. It seemed like the upper management over time, maybe early on, but once more of those original guys left and more of the current people came in, that do have this, business background, accounting and so forth. They didn't get on the ground. They just went on about the balance sheet, the stock buybacks. What does this, thing say? What does the balance sheet say? What does the profit margin say? Why do we got to invest into this if it works already? Nonsense. Really no forward thinking, to be honest. Beyond like the typical growth elements, like adding new routes and we can charge more by adding these services, like force people to pay extra to book in Group A, as an example. So it's like it's kind of like the snowball effect where the neglect kept growing and growing and growing over time, and then we fast forward to 2022, or actually, in fact, let's say 2021. So one second. Every once I take a break to get a sip of something, so yes, some fluid in me. last year. And I want to be fair. So what really, I would say what started this, this is the setup to what led to the meltdown, the beginning of the setup, the neglect, um, and then, if managers doesn't give it, to be honest, if managers doesn't give a shit about what their workers are saying, then it's like over time why they should give a shit, especially when the older, more veteran people are just eventually going to retire. They're going to reach retirement age. It's like, it's time for me to go. The direction of the company's changing. So you have a lot of that kind of building up over time. Yeah, apologize. A little dry nose there. Anyway, and then you add in the management neglect. So you have the build. This is the setup. Then 2020 comes, you have COVID, and that's where you start seeing, and every airline did this, not just Southwest. Let's be fair to the Southwest in this case. Laid off people, furloughed them. I mean, it's just a complete. It's one of the most epic changes in society is COVID, especially in regards to the airlines. We're going on the weeds about everything. But you think about the airlines, I mean, just the amount of air traffic, just tumbled. It's just levels we've never seen before. No one was on those planes. I mean, and they got complicated where airlines had to start flying ghost planes. Basically, no one on them besides the staff, just so they can have that route stay open. Because originally, if you're not flying the route, then you're supposed to give up the route according to regulations and so forth. Really, really weird time. But anyway, and I want to be fair. Was it the right thing to do? I say no. But again, it is a business. They got support and money, and this is where it kind of gets into the business element, where it seemed like, they might have helped some people, but didn't fully. But then the CEOs in the upper level get themselves raises or whatever to survive, I guess, at their very high pilot level. And it's just like that kind of nonsense. But anyway, then 2021 comes. Now travel, it's not full boom like 2022 was, but it started recovering. You start seeing that demand coming back. I flew a couple of times in 2021. I kind of saw that, even like locally and stuff. Like the airports got busy again. It was so nice to see, to be honest. Glad to see that. But with Southwest, kind of like all airlines, they started having staffing shortages, and this bled well into 2022 as well. The people they lost and never got back. Reasons are, some are at retirement age, they're done. Others are like, I'm going to move on. I'm done with this. I don't want to be in the service industry anymore or deal with customers or whatever. I mean, it even go beyond to even a lower level, like even like the people that maybe be like in the operations staff. Let's say in this case in Dallas for Southwest, or even like United or Chicago. Maybe it's like, what, I'm going to go into a different industry. I'm going to take my skills and let's say my analysis skills or whatever, and just apply to something else, just do something different. It happened. It just happened at such a vast, rapid rate that impacted these airline industries significantly, just because of COVID and so forth. So you have the staffing shortage, and then in 2021, you started seeing they had a couple. I like the New York Times. They had a couple of quote meltdown issues, between their systems going down, booking issues, getting people out on time. Just a complete, issues, or sorry, a lot of issues with really the support system. It's really the backbone of, beyond the actual flying and the actual staff, the backbone is the actual system, the computer system, the support system, organizing everything. I mean, you look at any of these control centers of these airlines, I mean, it's like NASA. They got these big screens, they're monitoring flights across the country, they're trying to see if a plane has been, plane cannot take off due to a manufacturer, an issue with something's broken, then how we're going to swap the plane, what plane can go in there and take over. And I've been involved in those. I've been involved in deplaning, and then another plane came from another flight, they cleaned out, and that became our flight to get out of it. Just that stuff happens, I won't say all the time, every single instance you'll fly, but it happens quite often where they got to do stuff like that, and that's where the operation control system comes in. Because they're the ones that have all the data and information where they can look at, this plane's going to come to this city later on. We're not going to utilize that plane to replace a plane that we had to take out today because there was a mechanical failure that made it deemed not safe to fly that day at all until we get the right parts and repairs to make it deemed safe to fly. This happens, this happens all the time in a way in terms of that it's just, especially these planes that when they're flying so much, it's just going to happen. And Southwest, same thing. They got a system they're supposed to show that I should say. Well, you add in how a lot of those systems are probably 15 to 20 years out of date. There's going to be problems, because the demand has increased a lot over time. The amount of planes have increased over time. There's just general growth over time that makes it harder and harder for an old outdated system to handle that. Let alone just having a better system that's more efficient, can load faster, just whatever it is, as a back-end support to make it easier for everyone to have, just a newer, updated system. So so you don't have that. You have an outdated system, and those issues start showing in 2021. It's kind of like almost like a red flag, like a warning sign. Kind of like like a foreshadowing things to come. So, excuse me. So now we go to 2022. Now I want to be fair. I think there was an issue with Southwest, but all the airlines had issues this summer. It was like the big news, delays, flight cancellations, understaffed, can't replace it. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. And, I'd say as a defense, we gotta be fair. I think the airlines are really in a weird spot the last 2 years. I just want to be fair. They've been in a weird spot from COVID, coming out of COVID, trying to reclaim that staff, trying to rebuild, the amount of flights lost. I think right now they say the airline industry as a whole, broadly as a whole, is operating about 85% pre-COVID levels. So we're still short by 15%. It doesn't sound a lot, but in reality it is. It's the amount of planes flights are taking up, the staff people, the way to operate. It's still a notable miss, but demand levels almost on par pre-COVID, roughly. But anyway, we had these issues in 2022, especially in the summer, that showed for all the airlines. Now we go to where this video is kind of the main focus, or let's say what's happened. I should say, the whole video is the focus on what's happened, but it's more the backstory, understanding the elements. Now it's like, how did this happen? Well, but before Christmas, there's going to be a big cold front going through, let's say, half, 2/3 of the country. A big Arctic blast is going to dip all the way down to Florida. And there's going to be they call it a bomb cyclone, a winter storm hitting parts of the country. A good example, I live in the Midwest, like Chicago and Missouri. It was like, sorry, I actually hit that. Anyway, I was going to say, let's get his wheels. There we go. So it's kind of fun. A little distracted there. But anyway, temperatures drop 40 degrees. They go in the 40s, 30s. The next day it's 0. Wind chill -25. And you had that throughout the U.S., especially from Chicago, Midwest to the East Coast. You had a lot of winter weather in certain areas. Obviously Buffalo is probably the worst in terms of the amount of snow they got. Chicago had some snow, but example, you had whiteout conditions, so that makes it impossible to fly. Temperature in Houston was below freezing. Dallas was cold. Miami's 40 degrees. New York City, they got a lot of rain. You just look at the map. So many cities are impacted from temperatures to bad weather that it basically impacted every airline in its system for a good 2 or 3 days. This started, around, December 23rd. So of course it was on a Sunday. It started around Thursday. So no, actually 22nd. And it's kind of started spiraling, And then by Friday, the worst of the weather is or by Saturday, the worst of the weather is finally done. But it was super cold, and the damage is left. And all these airlines took a lot of cancellation, a lot of hits, from basically right the 2 or 3 days before Christmas. But then we come out of Christmas, by Monday, December 26th and December 27th. Most of the airlines started recovering. American, United, Delta, JetBlue. Their schedule, there's still some cancellations, but significantly reduced cancellations, rescheduling, nothing like you saw, the days prior before Christmas. The exception was Southwest. Southwest still had like 70-75% of the flights canceled on Monday, while the airlines were recovering. And on Tuesday, when most of the airlines were down to maybe 5% cancellation rates, Southwest at 70%. And it's been like that every single day as I'm recording this video on December 29th. It's still like around 70%, 75% of the flights being canceled every day. And you even see flights, even crazy flights, like, I saw there's a guy from the Points guy, he's a travel website. He's in Hawaii. His Southwest flight, an inter-Hawaii flight, so it's just between the islands, got canceled. Now, for that to be canceled, there's a couple reasons that I can think of, just broadly my opinion. One, the plane they actually needed was going to come in from the mainland on a previous flight, let's say San Jose, Los Angeles, and never made it. That's possible. B, the plane's actually in Hawaii. Maybe it's on the wrong island, because they don't have the staff, people, or system has just completely failed to basically get it going. And astonishing, it's like, how could this happen? And I think a few reasons. One, the staff, I think, is over time has slowly gotten underpaid or just mistreated. Because you read, like, I don't think they got holiday pay, as an example. So it's like, you got that stuff taking a toll on these guys. It's like, why do I care anymore? Obviously, because of COVID, they're probably still understaffed from COVID era. They probably lost some very good veterans, people that know the system better, know how to adapt better from previous examples or issues over time. They're now gone. And then at the same time, you had the whole infrastructure, the back support system of Southwest, completely into, from this website was crashing constantly. People can't get a hold of the customer support. They put out Twitter, send messages, but it's like, what? There's only so much you can do with that. Gate agents were left in the dark. There's no one handling bags. Like, you look at the picture of the baggage and like piled up at all these airports and so forth. I mean, it's just insane. It just shows and that's another example. Those baggage systems. I want to be fair. I'm not entirely sure how much it falls in the airport and the actual airlines itself. But there's certain airports that handle better than us. It's got more updated systems. They're not in tweak it. They're not antique. They got ways to expedite it. Make it smoother, faster, better communication. Whatever it is. Things improve over time. But if you got an outdated system, you can't improve over time if you use a system that was built 25 years ago. And that's basically what Southwest is on all levels. Not just the baggage in this example. All levels are like that. And it's like astonishing just how bad it is. The core concept of any airlines to get someone from point A to point B in a reasonable time. After that, then you work on the other stuff. The baggage, flight experience, and so forth. But they can't even do that. They don't have a system that's telling people, the guys on the ground, what they can do. They have no information. The information is just completely crashed. The support staff that's still there, remaining on site, they're getting berated to tears, which I don't think is fair to those customers. Because to me, it's not their fault. It's the management. All these issues resolve to bad management. Management where it's completely neglected for far too long. They're out of touch. They're not on the ground. And it's just pathetic. And the current CEO who joined early 22. Now the pilot, back to that pilot that I mentioned earlier, he was kind of defensive of him, saying he is trying to learn better and get on the ground. But, at the same time, the guy gave himself a raise last summer. And it's like, well, did you give, pay raises to the people on the ground for the holidays? I mean, getting people to, commit to Christmas and New Year's, it's a fucking big commitment. I mean, pardon my language, but it is. You're going to tell them to, don't spend time with your family, spend time at the airport? I mean, are you fucking kidding me? So you got to pay them. You got to pay them well. I mean, it's like, who in the hell wants to go spend Christmas Day at the airport? Not, God forbid the flyers are stuck at the airport are doing it anyway. But you got, people in place, you got to get them some incentive to do that. You can't just assume they don't want to do it because, it's good for the Southwest. We got a goofy little heart logo, blah, 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 blah. Who gives a shit? You can't offer me a pizza party. You got to actually pay me. Pay me a little extra for me to sacrifice my holidays with family and friends to be at the airport. So it's like, you got to be honest with yourselves. You can't just sit there and massage yourselves and talk about top company lines. And in my view, which I disagree with the pilot in that regard, it's like, well, did the CEO do any of that? And from all the reports and everything I'm reading, no, he did nothing. He did nothing. Same with previous men. They did nothing. And now it's like the chickens that come home to roost in regards to staff and just don't care and reliable support and so forth. And the lack of investment. So now the CEO, I think, is actually interested in reinvesting the systems and getting that up to speed. So I give him a little points for that. If you actually go through it, but that's if he survives this ordeal. Yeah, who knows if he will. Excuse me, just got a little water there. So, but anyway, it's sad to see because I won't say everything's not prevented because obviously with the winter storm, that impacts every airline. But it speaks volumes how every airline but Southwest has recovered from the winter storm. Their cancellations are now on par of a typical day. This is going to happen in general on a typical day. But not with Southwest. Southwest is acting like this. And then they actually try to blame the winter storm several days later. I mean, what a joke. You can do that up until maybe December 26th. But when every airline is back on schedule, up to like 5-ish to 10, 5% roughly, where you're a 5% cancellation, you're 70% chance, it's on you. You can't blame the winter storm anymore. Your system has failed miserably. Your management has failed miserably. Your lack of investment has failed miserably. And you go out there and send out these little PR stunts and videos. To me, it's just a joke. It's really pathetic. And they honestly, I didn't say you should resign or anything. I'm not going to go, that's not really my place to say. But it's like, take some ownership and realize the way you guys have run things have been a complete disaster. The way you guys have run things were going to lead up to disaster. And I won't say 100% is preventable, but there's probably a lot more there that was overlooked just due to very short-sighted management in regards to Southwest Airlines, just the way they approached it. But that said, what's going to happen? Because I really don't know. Maybe this is the wake-up call, but maybe not. I'll be honest, I feel like a lot of the airlines are at a crossroad where they do need, beyond the actual, the personal issues with Southwest, it's like, there's a lot of stuff that goes on with the airline industry that I feel like you need a lot more work and help, which you're starting to see a bit. We're starting to see, airports modernized and so forth. I think the planes are getting better and more efficient. But just, example, there's a pilot shortage across the world. And, to become a pilot is very difficult. And obviously, it should not be a cakewalk because the people that pilot these planes are piloting, 100-plus passengers or who knows how many in a plane. It's like, well, that's people's lives in their hand. You got to have the hours, training, and so forth. But it's like, to become a pilot, it's like a very huge investment out of pocket. And now people are like, it's not worth it anymore. I mean, yes, eventually you get to a very good level where there's a lot of money. But the earlier levels, it's very difficult. It's like you have to spend a lot of money, go to flight school, and then you finally get into eventually a regional airline. You do a lot of these shorthand. You do a good 12, 16-hour days roughly, short haul flights. Between hubs and multiple spots. That takes a toll on anyone, to be honest. And anyway, the reason I mentioned that, just as an example, it's just more of an example of the issues I think are starting to really show up in the airline industry, more so now than in a long time. And I think the Southwest debacle is a clear example of that. Now, that said, I do think a lot of it was due to poor management in this regards, because airlines need to invest more in their infrastructure, like United and so forth. But the staffing shortage is an issue at every airline. The fact we cannot reach pre-COVID capacity yet is an example of the broader issues with the industry itself. Anyway, I don't know the best answer how to accomplish that by any means. But what I do know is that I think what's happened the last week with Southwest Airlines is a wake-up call that it's time we have these longer, hard-turn discussions and investments into our industry. Because I remember one time, this was a heavily regulated industry, more government subsidizing. So for something I'll probably see in Europe. I don't know if that's the right answer because, I know there's been issues in Europe I've seen subsidized airlines go under still. Like Alitalia's gone, Olympic Air's gone, been absorbed. So that isn't. To be fair, that isn't maybe the right answer. And mind you, a country subsidized airline like Germany, let's say as an example, is the size of a state over the U.S. There's a difference in scope and size as well. Again, this is going to the weeds as a quick example. But what I do know is that, we're in a weird time right now, within the airline industry. And it's just sad to see this happen to Southwest, just because, like, how many people it's impacted, how many holidays people were ruined. I mean, the stories that couldn't go to the friend's wedding. I mean, it's just, the list is endless. And it's just sad to see because a good chunk of it was probably preventable. Not fully, the storm did impact a lot. But as I said, a lot of this was just a snowball effect building up to this point. And they really did, well, I say did nothing, but it's just long-term neglect, is the best way to put it, how it built this mess. And hopefully they have learned from this. But, I'd be honest, seeing seeing what's happened with other companies and their downfalls or issues over the years, I don't know if I'm that optimistic, to be honest. Like, maybe the new CEO will try to get it right, but he could be ousted soon. Fortunately, when these things happen, you get ousted. It's just kind of the, cliches to say, but that's just how it kind of works in this world nowadays. So, but anyway, we'll see. But anyway, I hope you guys kind of enjoyed this video. It's kind of more of a rambling, but I did want to talk about a bit, like, the issues we've seen with Southwest, kind of the system, because this is a very interesting company from, like, airline perspective. Its history is very interesting, and how they got to this point is really interesting. It's just kind of sad that it's just, what's really happened, as I said, and it's like, all we can see is, will they try and prove, or maybe this is the camel that breaks the, maybe this is the straw that breaks the camel's back. Maybe more and more people will not fly Southwest ever again. I know that they've had a very dedicated fan base for a long time, but man, you look at what's happened last week. I mean, that could scold people for a long time. I mean, that could just chap them. It's like, especially nowadays where I've seen a lot of their routes their fares aren't really competitive anymore with the legacy. It's just the free baggage offsets it a little bit. It could change a lot of people's perspective now, how they view which airline to pick and how they fly, or where they want to fly and so forth. It's like, who they want to fly with. So anyway, it'll be very fascinating long term. They're gonna do an investigation. Will that do anything? I don't think it will, to be honest. But it's just like, I mean, these are all private company decisions. The company can go in there and point a gun at it, says invest more into your support system in Dallas, and they can't do that. And nor should they, to be honest. But the fact of the matter is, it's going to be a very interesting development the last few weeks. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Anyway, if whenever you're watching